Welcome back to Watch the Bookerman and to episode number 78 of Paul Heyman's TNA, and we begin the show with Paul Heyman in his office addressing the elephant in the room from last week. The man in charge speaks about the American Wolves jumping the guardrail to disrupt the main event last week, which was followed by Austin Aries walking out displaying the Ring of Honor World Championship on TNA television. Heyman says that he has no issue with acknowledging Ring of Honor, and he and the company even put on an anniversary event for Ring of Honor in recent months. He understands the frustrations of those who were previously associated with the promotion, but he doesn't understand how Austin Aries, who's rejected a contract the previous week, was able to gain access to the Impact Zone. As a result, extra security has been installed at the entrances of the building this week. He does accept, however, that this requires an explanation. He can't just ignore it like he tried to the previous week, and as such, he has invited Austin Aries to speak his mind in the middle of the ring. For one time only, he will give the man who rejected this company 2 weeks ago a live microphone and respond to any and all criticisms of himself and TNA. Paul Heyman thanks fans for their understanding in this complicated situation and promises a smooth running show for tonight. Paul Heyman doing really well in this segment, obviously improvising very well, and his hot catchphrase helping out, gaining heat to the fighting for their Honor storyline with an 80 rating, really happy with that. And we continue to focus on that what happened at the end of last week's show. AJ Styles versus Roderick Strong was our main event, but we were robbed of a decisive finish when Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards jumped the guardrail, attacking both men, following a brutal beatdown that left both competitors down and out. Austin Aries appeared from the back, holding the ROH World title over his shoulder. Mauro and Taz put over the huge buzz that followed that moment. A lot of talk online, fans speculating on social media of the implications of the incident at the end of last week's show. They also promote tonight's Impact, including the main event that will see 10 tag teams face off in a battle royal, the winners facing the Kings of Wrestling at Lockdown, as well as the 2 semi-final matches in the Knockouts Tag Team Championship #1 contendership tournament. We will end the show with Austin Aries and Paul Heyman in the ring, and we'll see what the next step of that storyline is. And just before we go into the first match of the night, they send over to footage from earlier today with the extra security around the Impact Zone being showed in various spots of the building. We also see the arrival of the New Age at the building. A speculation as to whether they were connected to last week's incident has been rife throughout the week. Tyler Black told Roderick Strong, foreshadowed that he wouldn't be the one being talked about at the end of the show, but was that just a coincidence? When their black transit van pulled up at the building, Jimmy Jacobs was asked about those very rumours, the leader of the New Age saying that he doesn't understand why the finger is being pointed at them, especially when half of this roster are former Ring of Honor alumni. Is Bryan Danielson going to be questioned? Desmond Wolfe? How about AJ Styles and Roderick Strong themselves? They both came through Ring of Honor. Did they orchestrate the attack on themselves? He's making the point that he thinks it's nonsensical that a link be made between the New Age and Austin Aries and the American Wolves. He has something better to talk about. Tyler Black being the #1 contender at Lockdown for the X Division Championship for one, or the Kings of Wrestling being so good that they've had to throw together this battle royal to try and find a reasonable way to work a challenge for them for the pay-per-view. Those are the questions that should be asked, not this mindless, baseless gossip. But the New Age are going to continue doing what they do, and they seem to have no interest in whatever's going on with the former Ring of Honor guys. A good promo segment there, Jimmy Jacobs improvising well, really happy with that. As we go into the first match of the night, the Beautiful People defeating DNR in 7 minutes and 57, Angelina Love pinning Roxy following a makeover, and they advance to the final of the tournament. Good performances in there, despite Velvet Sky being off her game. A 64 is a solid opening match as Angelina Love and Velvet Sky celebrate together in the ring, having taken a step closer to their opportunity at the Knockouts Tag Team Championships. They wanted that shot for a very long time. Could they get it at Lockdown? We'll find out who their opponents in the final of this tournament will be, as Alyssa Flash and Mischief of the New Age face Hamada and Taylor Wilde. A really poor rated segment, very much doing damage to the heat for the storyline. We then cut to the back where James Mitchell and the Monster Abyss, they're always in this similar dark setting for these promos, and James Mitchell is responding to the words of Jay Lethal last week, what he had to say to Bryan Danielson, and he almost did James Mitchell's job for him. Abyss's father says that Bryan Danielson should listen to every word that Jay Lethal says because all of it is true. What happened to Lethal is going to happen to Bryan. However, he knows that Danielson is too proud of a man to back down now. He's come too far, even when it comes to facing the unbeatable Abyss. Bryan may have the people behind him, he may be loved and respected in the back by his peers, but inside the 6 sides of steel, that doesn't matter one bit. Mitchell accepts Bryan's challenge on behalf of Abyss, confirming their match for the Lockdown pay-per-view, and this is probably the biggest match that Bryan Danielson has been involved in, a TNA original, somebody who's been booked very, very strongly throughout the last 15-16 months. Another good example of improvisation there as we move into the second match of the night, and Kevin Steen is the obvious favourite going into this match. He's been pushed more strongly in recent weeks, but it's his mouth that usually gets him in trouble, and in this case, arguing with the referee takes his eye off the ball. He tries to cheat, the referee isn't having it, and when he turns back around, Amazing Red catches him off guard with a code red. A decent match according to the game. I think these two would have had a really great match, and it's only a 58, but Amazing Red picks up a very surprising victory. The commentator is putting over this upset, given how the match was going just moments before. Kevin Steen seemed to have everything in hand, and then his issue with the referee cost him. As Amazing Red has his arm raised, however, he is jumped from behind by Kevin Steen, a poor loser following his first pinfall defeat in TNA. Kevin Steen lays into Amazing Red. I've put butter there for some reason, but brutally attacking him in the middle of the ring. Kevin Steen then rolls Amazing Red onto the apron, looking to set him up for a package pile driver on what is often called the stiffest part of the ring. Before Steen can do this, however, Homicide and Hernandez run down from the back, protecting their fellow LAX member. Steen escapes any revenge from LAX. He doesn't want to get involved 3-on-1, and he evades the furious Hernandez and Homicide and heads to the back. He has lost, but he's the one standing tall with Amazing Red down in the ring. We then go to the back where AJ Styles and Roderick Strong are shown entering the office of Paul Heyman. They've heard but aren't best pleased about Austin Aries getting a live microphone tonight, and they want to know why Paul Heyman is giving in to his demands. AJ warns Paul Heyman that by putting them out there in the middle of the ring tonight, they're putting a target on Aries and the Wolves' back, and it's going to make it really easy for Styles and Strong to come and find them and get their revenge. Paul Heyman, as always, looks to negotiate. He doesn't want any trouble, and part of allowing Austin Aries to say his piece, there was compromise. That's why on Saturday's TNA Evolved, he has secured it so that the American Wolves will face AJ Styles and Roderick Strong, a huge main event involving two guys who aren't even signed to the company, but that match only takes place if they don't get involved in what's happening tonight. If they come out during that final segment, the match is off. That's the agreement. AJ Styles and Roderick Strong then speak between themselves and say they will go along with this temporary truce, but promise that it won't be pretty when they get their hands on Richards and Edwards this Saturday. Paul Heyman smirks. That is completely fine with him. He may be willing to negotiate with the enemy, but it certainly doesn't mean that he won't enjoy seeing them get beaten down. Whether they'll be able to do that against one of the best tag teams in the world, we'll see on Saturday's Evolve, advancing 2 storylines again, so happy with that. As we go into the second Knockouts Tag Team #1 Contendership Tournament semi-final, and as the New Age are defeated by Hamada and Taylor Wilde in 11 minutes and 35, Hamada pinning Mischief with a Fisherman's Driver, we see that Alyssa Flash has suffered a dislocated shoulder. Not sure how long that's going to keep her out, but it's certainly not a good thing. What is a good thing is that we chose Hamada and Taylor Wilde to go to the final, because if we hadn't, we wouldn't have a final. The colour commentary and announcing for once doing good things, a decent match, getting a 47 rating. I do feel that would have been considerably better had it not been for the injury. Easily in the 50s, Jerry Lynn telling us there it wasn't anybody's fault, so there's no heat or any simmering tension, so that's good to see. And we end the first hour with Hamada and Taylor Wilde celebrating their victory, a huge win over a much more experienced duo than they are. They'll go on to face the Beautiful People in that tournament final next week. The winning team will go on to face Mickie James and Tara at Lockdown. Opening up the second hour, we once again see this very serious and stern side of Kurt Angle, and he has every reason to be. The World Heavyweight Champion making his way down to the ring. He briefly gives his opinion on the Austin Aries situation, but he's basically condemning him without going into it too much, as his attention is on Mr. Anderson, who he calls out. This time, unlike last week, his call out is answered in person. but Anderson says that if Angle lays a single finger on him, Matt Morgan will destroy those dog tags. Anderson doesn't have them with him, so it's no use trying to beat him down and steal them back. Morgan has them in an undisclosed location. He's watching, and if anything happens, they will be destroyed, no questions asked. Mr. Anderson has Kurt Angle exactly where he wants him, and he knows it. Kurt knows it. The two going back and forth. Kurt knowing that he cannot do the thing that he most wants to do. Again, it's off script. We want a raw emotion from Kurt Angle. Mr. Anderson, poor when improvising dialogue, which for such an important segment is very disappointing. He agrees that he may have gone too far, but he's proven a point. He took something from Kurt Angle because he felt something was taken from him. At Final Resolution 2010, he was screwed out of his opportunity at the World Heavyweight Championship, and he still hasn't got a fair one-on-one shot. Anybody can watch that footage back and see that a rematch should have been made immediately. But Bobby Lashley and then Tyler Black and AJ Styles all got their shots before him. Even Low Ki got a shot before Mr. Anderson, and he hadn't been seen for the last 3 years. Anderson had to go to extreme measures to get Kurt's attention, and it's worked. The options now are simple. Either he gets the shot, or Anderson goes even further, and there's only one way he knows how to do that, but he's willing to do anything to get that title shot. There's a threat there. We don't necessarily know what it is, but is it something even more personal than taking those dog tags? Angle is furious, and it's all that pent-up aggression because he knows that he can't do anything but agree to the match. With that said, he's not too annoyed. He's going to get the dog tags back, and the punishment for all of this for Anderson is going to be getting into these 6 sides of steel with him. So the idea here is Anderson has pushed so hard to get this match, but be careful what you wish for, because Kurt Angle inside a cage is a very, very scary proposition, gaining heat to the storyline. These guys have got 99 ratings in entertainment rated segments before. This was about 10 minutes, so I did hope it would be up there, but obviously Anderson not doing a good job will bring that segment down. Nonetheless, really happy with an 87. We then see footage from moments ago. Austin Aries and the American Wolves entered the building ahead of their confrontation with Paul Heyman later on tonight, flanked by a security team that they have been personally assigned to keep them safe while they go through the backstage area. The trio enter the Impact Zone. As he walks through the door, Aries takes the ROH World Championship out of his bag, proudly draping it across his shoulder before entering enemy territory. And the idea here is that when going through the back, despite having the security, they're going to be going past a lot of TNA wrestlers, and Aries wants to make sure he is flaunting that championship in the process. The 4th match of the night sees Low Ki defeat Yoshihashi in 8 minutes and 7 seconds with a Warrior's Way. Maybe a little bit longer than you'd expect Yoshihashi to last with the way he's been booked, but Larry Sweeney and Kazuchika Okada are both at ringside, so maybe they can cause enough distraction to allow Yoshihashi to get some offense in, but it's a decisive dominant victory for Low Ki nonetheless. While he stands tall after another successful night, the focus isn't on him after the match, as there seems to be some sort of issue brewing within Sweet and Sour. Larry Sweeney, frustrated, takes out his anger on Yoshihashi, as he's the lowest status member of the group, is kind of the easy target. Kazuchika Okada doesn't like this and enters the ring to confront Sweeney, telling him to back off. Sweeney is furious with this defiance and fires back at Okada. Normally these guys can all keep their composure, and Larry Sweeney, he's been with Okada for almost a year now, so this is the first cracks we've seen between them. Running out from the back, Nick and Matt Jackson look to defuse the situation. They're shocked, but they don't want it to go any further. Sweeney backs down. He accepts he was out of line. This is more him sucking up and trying to get back on Okada's good side than anything, and he extends a hand to Okada. Let bygones be bygones, but Okada's stance doesn't soften. He is still annoyed about what's happened and refuses to shake his agent's hand. Nick Jackson encourages him to do so, but this only angers him further, being told what to do, and Okada pushes Nick Jackson over before leaving up the ramp, Yoshihashi following behind him. This has kind of come out of nowhere, and whether it's just everybody blowing off a little bit of steam because of the poor performances, we will follow in the coming weeks. We then head to the back where Sara Del Rey, terrible without a script. I've kind of noticed that she always is, but for some reason it never crosses my mind when booking the segment to just script her and play it safe. She is interviewed by Jeremy Borash, and he announces that Awesome Kong will face Madison Rayne on next week's show. Both women are known to be looking to challenge Sara Del Rey at Lockdown, and she is asked about the match. It's expected that the winner will face her at the pay-per-view, and Jeremy Borash wants her insight on that. The Knockouts champion says that when she came to TNA, she set her sights on this title straight away, and Slammiversary was her first opportunity. But the Queen of Wrestling didn't become the Queen of the Mountain. Madison Rayne did instead. Her second opportunity came in a number one contendership match against Awesome Kong, and she made a mistake in that match and she was defeated. She is woman enough to admit that. Eventually, she was able to defeat Awesome Kong at Bound for Glory, but people always point to the fact that Kong is the only woman to have pinned her in TNA. As a fierce competitor, it does still eat away at her, so if there are two women you could argue she has something to prove to, the top two names would be Madison Rayne and Awesome Kong. Sara Del Rey knows that she is levels above both of them, and whoever it is at Lockdown, she'll prove it again, but she's just putting over the fact that there is a story with either of these women, so whichever way it goes next week, there's certainly a backstory going into Lockdown. We then get another number one contendership match. Every title match from Lockdown so far, other than Anderson Angle, has had a number one contendership match. That might be seen as a good thing, but in another way it does say we've not necessarily got the deepest storylines. Again, to offset that, we have got the big major storylines with the developing Austin Aries story, so hopefully we're finding the right amount of balance, and we get a final four here: Robert Roode, Frankie Kazarian, Paul London and El Generico. I did have to keep Shelton Benjamin strong in this match as he wasn't happy with the outcome, so probably one of those spots where the person that he eliminates, maybe James Storm, gets back up and distracts him, and that results in him being thrown to the outside. I've just noticed the rating isn't very good. I understand that these maybe not the most over guys in there, but I always think battle royals are fun, and as long as you don't overdo them, they can be enjoyable. With that final four, Paul London is thrown out by Robert Roode and Frankie Kazarian, which leaves two members of the Forefathers, albeit two separate tag teams. It would be Kazarian and Daniels, or Roode and Storm, going on to face the Kings of Wrestling, but against the odds, El Generico, perhaps a little miscommunication between the members of the Forefathers, and he is able to win the match. Remember, it was only last week that Generico and Colt Cabana picked up their first victory in the company as a tag team, and now they are the number one contenders, so we really want to sell this as something that's come completely out of the blue. Obviously, you could argue they've not been built up enough, but it's not like we do this all the time. We've had very, very established teams challenging the Kings of Wrestling, and I just thought when we didn't have an obvious challenger, having somebody shockingly come out of the blue and win that match, and it's hopefully two guys who are getting over, or I'm hoping they'll become that way over time. Colt Cabana returning to the ring despite being eliminated fairly early in the match and celebrating with the victorious El Generico. He's seemingly in just as much shock as the commentators and hopefully much of the audience are. Mauro and Taz put over the fact that Colt Cabana and Generico earned their first victory just last week, but they have pulled off a major upset and will get their match at the World Tag Team titles at Lockdown. We had a promo a few months ago, where Cabana said that was their ultimate goal, and obviously I've mentioned a few times how much I enjoy seeing Generico and Castagnoli in the ring together, so a few different things coming together there for what I hope will be a very good match. But as Cabana and Generico celebrate, the Kings of Wrestling come to the top of the ramp. Hero and Castagnoli look down at their upcoming challengers, then to each other. They're looking at their titles as well, and they laugh off. They don't see any conceivable way that they'll be defeated by these two. They appear more than happy to face El Generico and Colt Cabana at Lockdown, and maybe that's an opinion shared by the viewers who don't really see that Generico and Cabana have any way of winning this match, but maybe we could pull the upset of upsets off at a huge pay-per-view in just 10 days time. We then come back to the final segment where Paul Heyman, already stood in the ring, invites Austin Aries to come out with him. Unfortunately, Austin Aries not doing well without a script to follow, which, considering how important this segment is supposed to be, that's pretty bad, but nonetheless, we gain heat to the storyline. A 78 is still a good rating, so I'm certainly not going to complain too much, and there was that much I wanted to put in this segment that I've not really been able to get it into the text in game, but I've got some notes here too. The security team who have escorted them throughout the building stand at the bottom of the stage, ensuring no angry members of the TNA roster can come out and get involved in any way. Austin Aries and the Wolves enter the ring with Paul Heyman, and Heyman recaps what went down last week, explains that he is only giving the floor to Aries because he wants to get these issues in the open, and the man with the Ring of Honor World Championship over his shoulder takes that invitation without hesitation. airing the dirty laundry of TNA buying out Ring of Honor. Again, I'm not a massive fan of work shoots myself, but in this scenario and the type of storyline that we're going for, I do think they can be very, very effective. And he's talking about how he knows that Paul personally pushed for Ring of Honor to be bought out by TNA. Certain people weren't interested, but Paul Heyman insisted there was value in buying out Ring of Honor. And what did they do with it? They bought the company and shelved every single wrestler who was signed. They had no interest in doing anything with Ring of Honor other than pad their own ego. Was Heyman afraid of the competition, or was it so that they could run the same buildings of Ring of Honor under their own brand TNA Evolved and pretend that it was something they created, pretend that they were taking the business somewhere it had never been before? Aries says that is bullshit, and Paul Heyman knows it. For him, this got a lot more personal. He was angry on the sidelines, and then Paul Heyman tried to bring him in. They offered him this tryout. They insulted him by telling him to jump through hoops just to get a contract with this company. And of course, the treasure at the end of the rainbow, the shot at the X Division Championship at Lockdown. They sold him so much on what this pay-per-view means to the company, and he knows that he has the power in his hands that he can completely derail the whole show, but he's not going to do that. On Saturday night, the Wolves have agreed to face AJ Styles and Roderick Strong, not because they want to be co-opted by TNA, but because they're going to send a message. The Hammerstein Ballroom was Ring of Honor's backyard, and they are going to beat the hell out of two TNA guys at that show. Lockdown is coming up, and that's supposed to showcase the very best of TNA Wrestling, this company that Paul Heyman believes that he has dragged up from the ground and made into the best wrestling promotion in the world, but Austin Aries doesn't buy it for a second. This pay-per-view Lockdown can go ahead. All the eyes in the wrestling world can be on the show because he wants Ring of Honor represented on that card. He challenges Paul Heyman, Ring of Honor versus TNA, Lethal Lockdown. Paul Heyman, he responds to a lot of the criticisms. He says that these things are a lot more complicated and take a lot more time than Austin Aries thinks, but one thing that's straightforward is his answer. He accepts Austin Aries' challenge for Lockdown and announces that AJ Styles will be the captain of Team TNA, so ending Impact with a huge announcement for the Lockdown pay-per-view and an absolutely monumental match as Lethal Lockdown sees Team ROH against an AJ Styles led Team TNA. It was kind of a show that was built on the promos rather than the matches. I mean, I did expect better from the main event. I expected better from Anderson Angle. So if we'd have got just a little bit lucky with like Aries not struggling when improvising and Anderson not struggling when improvising, it could have been easily in the high 70s. It's that simple, really. I'll go through both episodes of TNA Evolved as well as the Go Home show for TNA Impact. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you'll join me again next time.